It's September 16th, 2022. Adobe acquiring Figma for $20 billion. Good idea or not? A new AI model that will follow the actions that you teach it. And finally, Kara Swisher's code conference free on YouTube. Let's jump right in. Starting this week, we have the big news. Figma purchased by Adobe for $20 billion. Now, if you were anywhere on Twitter or even in the news, I'm sure you saw this. This is a really big deal. Figma is one of the emerging design tools, and I'd argue even more than just design, for any type of collaboration for teams. It is something that companies use quite frequently, and Adobe was noticing that it was being used in place of their software. So designers using Figma were able to share and collaborate with teammates very easily. It made it a lot harder to do so when you're using something like Adobe and you have to pass those files back and forth. The chatter on Twitter was really mixed. You had a lot of people who were fairly upset. They loved Figma because it wasn't a part of Adobe, who has a monopoly on the design tools that people use, and people making old jokes about pirating the Figma version. Now, one thing that was really interesting, there was a lot of chatter around the $20 billion price. Now, this is a really large amount. It makes it one of the top acquisitions made by a tech company ever. There was some really interesting commentary on that price compared to some other public companies that are worth less. Some of the best commentary, though, came from Amal, who sold his company LiveLoop to Microsoft through an acquisition. He has a really awesome thread here that I'll link in the notes that talks about the challenges of building collaborative software at a company like Microsoft or some of these legacy companies that have to deal with other versions of old software. So he gives the example of Photoshop being file-based and talking about all the backwards compatibility that you would need in file formats to really make this feasible. Figma not needing to build any of those older copies really gave it the advantage of making it really collaborative. So instead of having that file format, it really made it easy for Figma to iterate really quickly, have third-party workflows that developers could tap into, and just generally build a product that moves a lot faster than something like Adobe and the big behemoth that it is. I'm really hoping Figma stays true to how it is and really does get to operate independently. That's not usually the case when some of these big acquisitions go down, so we'll have to see how Adobe changes Figma's culture. I'm a big proponent of Figma. I use it for all of the design options that I do here on Tech Teardown, and even the presentations that I do for these videos take place in Figma. So I really hope it doesn't change that much. We'll have to wait and see, but really do yourself a favor if you're interested in this acquisition and take a look at Amal's thread here on why the $20 billion amount is justified because of how difficult it is to build these things. It's a really interesting look and provides a different perspective than some other commentary that basically boils down to building this type of software is really hard. If you're trying to bake it into an already existing product, it's often easier to just do it from scratch. Looking at the other number 2 big tweet of the week is around the Act AI model. So this comes from a company called Adept AI Labs. This company was started by a number of people coming from the Google AI team or Google Brain, and they launched a new model this week called Act-1. Now, what's really exciting about this model is the ability to use text prompts to have it complete an action. So one of the examples that they gave was typing in "find me a house in Houston," and you can see the model is then able to know that it should navigate to a website to look for a house. So it goes to Redfin, starts typing in some different queries there to actually find a house. Another example they had was finding a refrigerator under a certain dollar amount. So it starts the search by going to Craigslist, not a bad place to start the search, and looking for options that are under that dollar amount. You can see it sets the max and tries to find a refrigerator. Now, what's really nice is that you can see that it goes through the results here, and then when prompted to send a message to the particular seller to see if it can pick up at a certain time, it's able to compose an email and input the message without any help needed. Now, they also gave examples of it working in things like a spreadsheet, so making a profit margin column, which is really neat, and then being able to do things like highlighting any outliers there in yellow. Just really cool stuff that it can do. I'd be really excited to play around with it. I've signed up for the alpha. You can think of all sorts of things that you do throughout the day that could probably just be a little bit more efficient, especially if you didn't know where to start on doing some of these tasks. Now, this is a really early model, and I'm sure it's going to have a lot more development that it'll need before it goes to a more generalized release, but this is the kind of things that can be done in AI that are just really amazing. And finally, for tweet number 3, we have the code interviews from Kara Swisher for 2022. She tweeted out that all of the code conference interviews are now on YouTube. So you can see here there's 26 different videos that have been uploaded. They're really good interviews. If you like her interview style, I think it's really approachable, down to earth. And I would really recommend taking a listen to especially the interview with Snap CEO Evan Spiegel and the interview with Google and Alphabet CEO Sundar Pichai. Now, there's just a ton of good content here, so I hope you enjoy. That's it for me this week. As always, if you like these types of videos, please hit subscribe, and thanks for watching.